What would you do if everything you believed about truth, every rule, every fact, every equation, suddenly broke in the face of something you couldn't explain? If the one thing you mocked your entire life looked back at you? This is the story of Michael Turner, a man who made a living dismantling faith only to find himself standing before the Virgin Mary. Not in a dream, not in a church, but in the unlikeliest moment of his life, when reason could no longer protect him. Before we continue, share in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Let's see how far the miracles of the Virgin Mary have reached. And if you haven't yet joined our family, subscribe now, because here, each day, we witness the tender love and mighty power of the Mother of God. Michael Turner had built his reputation on disbelief. He didn't write about hope. He wrote about fraud. Faith healers, crying statues, bleeding hosts, all reduced in his hands to clever hoaxes and camera tricks. In the Herald Tribune newsroom, his name carried the weight of certainty. If Michael Turner said it wasn't a miracle, it wasn't. But there was something even sharper than his pen: the grief he never spoke of. 5 years earlier, his fiancée Sarah had died of lymphoma. She was the kind of woman who believed angels could hide in strangers, that prayers could rewrite endings. He had sat beside her hospital bed, watching her fingers curl around a rosary as her breath weakened. When the monitors finally fell silent, he left the hospital and walked until dawn. At the bridge, he pulled her rosary from his pocket and let it slip into the river, beads sinking like unanswered prayers. He never went back to church. The sound of hymns made him sick. He learned to fill his Sundays with coffee, silence, and headlines. That October morning, the newsroom glowed with fluorescent fatigue. Rain scratched against the window as Michael scrolled through a new headline. Virgin Mary appears in nursing home window. Locals claim healing. He smirked. Another one. His editor didn't even look up. People love a Christmas miracle. You're the guy for it, Mike. He didn't believe in miracles, but he did believe in deadlines. Later that day, while waiting for his coffee at a quiet cafe, his phone buzzed. Tribune debunker en route to St. Amelie miracle. The two women beside him looked up from their lattes. One of them whispered, "That's him." Their eyes met his, wide, curious, maybe fearful. Michael pretended not to notice. He turned toward the window, where rain streaked the glass in silver threads. Across the street, a small statue of the Virgin Mary stood outside a church, hallowed by the dim streetlight. Her white paint was chipped, one hand cracked from years of wind and cold. Still, something about her quiet endurance drew him closer. When he stepped outside, the air was cold enough to bite. He stopped before the statue, shaking the water from his coat. At her feet lay a few wilted magnolias, pale and stubborn against the concrete. He crouched, brushing the petals aside. His fingers grazed the marble, and for an instant, it felt alive. A faint warmth, soft and startling, like breath on cold skin. Then, gone. He straightened, heart quickening without reason. "It's just the weather," he said aloud, though the words didn't sound convincing. That night, he packed his camera, his recorder, his notebook, all his tools of skepticism. He searched for St. Amelie, Louisiana, a small town folded between bayous and forgotten highways, famous only for its old French church and the rumor of a healing window. He told himself it was just another assignment, another ghost story to strip bare. But as he zipped his bag, he noticed something in the side pocket. A rosary, old and dulled with age. He didn't remember putting it there. The streetlight outside flickered, steadying on the beads as they caught the faint light, gleaming like eyes he thought had closed forever. The road to St. Amelie coiled through the Louisiana wetlands, where mist clung to the water like old silk. Cypress shadows bowed over the two-lane road, their roots breaking through the asphalt in slow rebellion. Michael drove in silence, the hum of the tires the only rhythm keeping his thoughts from unraveling. The rosary still sat in his coat pocket. He could feel its weight, soft and accusatory, against his heart. He told himself it was habit, superstition, a leftover from the story's subject matter. But when the beads rattled as he took a sharp turn, his hand instinctively brushed them, and he hated himself for it. By late afternoon, he reached St. Amélie, a blink-and-miss town where time itself seemed to have stopped. The gas station was abandoned, its sign half swallowed by kudzu. The diner had one working light, but the church, white stone, chipped at the corners, still stood immaculate, as if guarded by invisible hands. He parked by the gate. Two children were chasing each other in the courtyard, their laughter ringing sharp against the quiet. Nearby, a woman knelt before a small statue of the Virgin Mary, her candle trembling in the breeze. Inside, the air was thick with incense and beeswax. It smelled of devotion, old prayers soaked into wood and stone. Father Benoit met him by the nave, short and thin, eyes sharp enough to cut through any performance. "You must be Mr. Turner," he said, his French accent soft as worn linen. "We've been expecting you." Michael smiled thinly. "That's what everyone says before they start hiding things." The priest didn't answer. He led him toward the far wall, where sunlight leaked through the colored panes of stained glass. "Here," he said, "the miracle window." Up close, it looked unremarkable, streaked, uneven, with faint traces of oil that caught the light oddly. Yet something about it drew the eye. Not the colors, but the way the air around it seemed slightly warmer. "It began on the Feast of the Assumption," the priest explained. "A nurse saw what looked like a figure. Since then, people come to pray." Michael leaned closer, camera poised. The surface shimmered faintly under his breath. He snapped a few photos, crouched to another angle. "You've ruled out residue, condensation?" The priest nodded. "No paint, no moisture, no trick of light. The technicians said the glass behaves like living skin, whatever that means." Michael wrote the phrase down but didn't comment. Later at the motel, he sat before his laptop, the glow of the screen painting his face blue. Headline: "The Myth of St. Amélie. Faith against the lens of reason." His fingers hovered. Faith creates. Delete. Science cannot. Delete again. The cursor blanked, waiting. He exhaled, long and tired. That was when he noticed the sound, a faint tap at the door. Not a knock, just paper brushing tile. He opened it to find an envelope, weather-stained, slipped beneath the frame. Inside, a torn scrap read, "The window breathes at the witching hour." No signature. He stared down the empty hall. No footsteps, no shadow. Only the flickering motel light buzzing like a trapped insect. He told himself it was a prank, a local stunt for gullible pilgrims. But by midnight he was sitting on the edge of his bed, shoes on, coat ready. Curiosity, or something deeper, had taken hold. The town was silent when he stepped out. The cold air bit sharp against his face. As he walked toward the church, the cypress trees swayed gently, whispering secrets to the fog. The church door was unlatched, candles still burned from the evening mass, their light trembling across the pews. Then a faint hum, so soft it could have been the wind. He turned toward the window. The glass shimmered. No bulb, no reflection, a slow pulse, like breath on frost. The colors moved within it, not changing hue, but intensity, like something inside trying to wake. He stepped closer. The air was warm, the scent of lilies unmistakable. He touched the pane and felt it, a heartbeat, faint and rhythmic, answering his own. He jerked his hand back. The glow receded instantly, fading into stillness. Only his reflection remained, pale and shaken. He lifted his camera, but the lens fogged over. In the silence, something brushed against his memory. Sarah, laughing, her hands clasped in prayer before the statue they'd kept in their childhood room. The same lilies in a chipped vase. He whispered, "Sarah." No reply, only the ticking of a candle running out of wax. He stayed there until the light died completely, until the church sank back into its ordinary darkness. When he finally stepped outside, dawn was only a hint, a gray promise beyond the bayou trees. The air had changed. He slipped his hand into his pocket. The rosary's beads were warm. And at that moment, he realized his fingers were trembling. not from fear, from recognition. Lilies filled the nave, impossible in frost, Sarah's favorite, from a garden long buried.
Morning came gray, with light the color of old paper. Michael sat by the motel window, camera beside him, reviewing the night's footage. Frame by frame, darkness, static, reflection, nothing. Yet his notes told a different story. Palm to pane, vibration faint, like a heart behind stone. He paused, reread it, then shut the notebook as though it contained a confession. Back at Sainte Amélie, Father Benoit was lighting votive candles, the small flames shivering in rhythm. "You didn't sleep," he said without looking up. Michael forced a dry laugh. "I've slept through worse than ghosts." "And yet, you look as if one followed you home." The words struck him more than he expected. "What if I told you the glass felt alive?" The priest didn't blink. "Then perhaps it is not the glass that changed." Michael turned away. He hated riddles dressed as faith. By afternoon, he was back outside with his notebook, searching for cracks in the limestone or trick wiring. Nothing. The wall was clean, ancient, honest. Villagers passed with soft smiles, whispering greetings as they went to the well. Near the garden, he overheard an old man murmuring to a young girl. "She prayed for her mother. The pain left that night." The man caught Michael watching. "You from the papers?" Michael nodded. "Write this," the man said, voice trembling. "When she touched the window, it was warm, warmer than a hand." Michael wrote it down, hand unsteady. Warmth. Test anomaly. Possible subjective experience. That evening, he sat again in the rectory. The priest handed him an envelope marked with the diocesan seal. "They'll send an investigator, a scholar, not a skeptic." Michael smirked. "Same species, different tools." The priest smiled faintly. "Perhaps. One dissects truth. The other listens to it." Night found him back in the motel, a stale bulb humming overhead. He opened his laptop and began typing. "The miracle of Sainte Amélie is likely a convergence of humidity, reflection, and folklore." He stopped. Backspaced. "Or perhaps something we're not yet equipped to measure." He read the sentence twice, almost whispering it as though testing the shape of belief on his tongue. Then, a sound. 3 faint knocks. He opened the door. Empty hallway. Except a single petal at the threshold. White. Dewed. Fresh. He crouched, picked it up. Its scent lingered. Faint magnolia, clean and old as prayer. He left it on the table beside his camera, where it seemed to breathe in the dim light. Midnight pulled him back to the church. Locked doors, no moon. He circled to the side. Through the narrow window, he saw movement, or something like it. The pane shimmered, no light behind it, only a slow pulsing, like breath on glass. He pressed his hand against it. Cold. Then, something. A faint thrum. A vibration. A pulse trapped in the marble frame, like a heart refusing silence. His breath hitched. He drew closer. On the glass, tiny beads were forming. Not water. Thicker. Slower. When his finger touched, they clung to his skin, fragrant with ancient resin, sharp as myrrh. He stepped back, trembling. No words, no reason, just the smell of burial oil and lilies in a winter that should not bloom. "Sarah?" he whispered. The echo came soft, almost shaped by his own breath. "Believe." The word curled through the air like smoke. He blinked, and the light vanished. The pane was dark once more, only his reflection staring back, pale, stunned, disbelieving. He wiped his hand across his sleeve, but the scent wouldn't leave. By morning, townsfolk found him sitting on the church steps, notebook open to a single line. "The unmeasurable is still real." They asked what he had seen. He only said, "Do magnolias bloom in January?" They shook their heads. "Not here, not since the flood." He smiled faintly. "Then maybe I'm late to spring." As he walked down the street, a petal drifted past him, caught in the wind. He looked up, and from the tower above, bells began to ring. No hand on the rope. Only the sky, answering back.
The bells faded into silence, leaving Michael suspended between noise and prayer. He couldn't tell which was louder, the echo in his ears or the thud of his own pulse refusing to quiet. By morning, the town buzzed like a hive of rumor and reverence. Children whispered outside the bakery. A fisherman swore the smell of lilies clung to his nets. Someone pinned a headline to the parish door, not from the Tribune, but handwritten in blue ink. "Glass breathes. Saint Amélie prays." Michael stood staring at it, the letters wavering in the damp air. It wasn't journalism, it was testimony. In the church, Father Benoit was sorting reports into neat piles. "They'll send experts soon," he said, "to measure, to sample, to doubt." Michael gave a thin smile. The church never changes. The priest looked up. Maybe not, but hearts do. He left before Michael could answer. The pews felt too quiet without him. Sunlight slanted through the same stained window, fractured and soft, painting the dust in floating gold. Michael raised his hand to the glass. Beneath his palm, a faint thrum, so subtle he almost missed it. Not sound, not movement, more like something alive, trapped deep within the pane, struggling to breathe. He pulled back quickly, breath catching. The resin stain was still there, hard and glistening, fragrant when touched. At the motel that night, he opened his laptop. The document blinked at him, empty except for the title, "The Saint Amélie Case." He began to type. "Truth has a pulse." Pause. Delete. "Some lies wear halos." Delete again. He sat back, stared at the cursor, that single blinking reminder of indecision, then leaned forward. The next words came slower, unfiltered. "If the divine hides, it hides where logic stops looking." He stopped. His hands shook slightly. The sentence felt too raw, too close to belief. But it stayed, like something written in confession rather than curiosity. When he finally slept, it wasn't dreamless. A child's hand reaching toward glass, a faint shimmer of oil, a voice that wasn't voice, only breath, saying his name through the dark. At dawn, he found an envelope under the door. No name, no return address. Inside, a photograph, aged and curled at the edges. The church window again, but in the picture, light bled through a thin fracture down the center, bending into a shape like a heart. On the back, a scrawl in uneven ink. Light finds its way through broken places. He carried it back to St. Amélie. The church was nearly empty, except for an elderly caretaker sweeping near the altar. Her motions were rhythmic, unhurried. "Do you know this window?" he asked, holding up the photo. Her eyes softened. "Old scar from the flood," she said, "but scars aren't the end of beauty. They're how the light remembers." He didn't respond,
just turned toward the glass, the scent of resin still faint in the air, mingling with candle smoke. When Father Benoit returned, he found Michael sitting alone in the front pew, notebook open but untouched. "You're not writing," the priest said quietly. Michael smiled faintly. "Maybe I'm listening." The priest studied him. To what? He glanced up at the window, where the light, fractured and soft, trembled across his face. To what's left when proof runs out. Benoit nodded, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "That's faith's beginning, not its end." Michael rose. His coat brushed the wood as he turned toward the door. On impulse, he dipped his fingers in the holy water font and crossed himself, slow, deliberate, almost clumsy from disuse. Outside, the air was crisp. Somewhere far off, church bells answered, or maybe it was only his heart, steady now, keeping time with something unseen. He didn't look back. He didn't need to.
Weeks passed. The world moved on, as it always does when miracles don't fit headlines. But St. Amélie didn't sleep. Pilgrims began to arrive, quietly at first. A nurse from Rouen who'd lost her husband to the sea. A mechanic who carried his son's photo in his wallet like a wound that wouldn't close. A journalist's story had whispered its way into their grief. They came not for spectacle, but for silence. For a window that had once wept oil and now stood still, unadorned except for faint streaks of light that seemed to move with the sun. Michael watched from the back pew, notebook closed on his lap. He no longer came to report, only to remember. One morning, as the dawn turned the nave pale gold, a child knelt near the altar. She couldn't have been more than 10, hair uncombed, shoes too big. She traced the floor cracks with one finger, whispering something no one could hear. When she stood, she left a petal. White, dewed, fresh as if plucked from heaven's edge. Father Benoit saw it too. He looked at Michael, and neither spoke. By spring, the diocese sent investigators again. This time, no equipment. Only a letter from the bishop himself, hand-signed, ink slightly smudged. Ex mea experientia, non naturale. From my experience, not natural. Let those who pray discern. The paper trembled slightly in Benoit's hands as he read it aloud. Then he folded it, placed it beneath the statue's base, and whispered a single word: Fiat. That evening, the sky broke open with rain, the kind that cleans more than it soaks. Michael stood outside, coat soaked, eyes lifted toward the window. Through the curtain of storm, he saw the light shift again, not glowing, not flaring, just breathing, as though the glass itself exhaled forgiveness. When he returned home, he found a letter waiting, postmarked from Lyon. No signature, only a line on torn paper. I read your article. The truth you found. I needed it. And below that, a pressed petal, brittle and white. He set it on his desk beside the notebook, still half filled with sentences that tried to explain what could not be weighed. The cursor blinked again, patient. He began typing. Not for print this time, but for himself. We think faith begins with belief. Maybe it begins with fracture, with a crack wide enough for light to enter. He stopped, exhaled, closed the laptop. Outside, the bells from St. Amélie drifted faint through the rain. He couldn't tell if they were real or if memory had learned to ring. He rose, opened the window, and let the night air in. Somewhere, far beyond what words could reach, the sound of metal striking metal, soft, rhythmic, echoed back, like a heart keeping time with eternity.
And for the first time since the river took his faith, Michael crossed himself without hesitation. Not to test, not to prove, but to thank.